my success in life, I found ways to be successful in life, had to do with my mindset, but I was honestly pretty miserable, even though I did have relief here and there, and I found ways to manage my conditions. I just learned not to complain about it, and I learned to find some acceptance. And that's how I lived for several years until I found the mind body approach. And that's how this whole transcending pain started, was coming across the mind body approach and understanding the role of the brain when it comes to chronic pain and symptoms. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that. What is the brain's role in chronic pain and symptoms? And that's where my healing journey really took off. When I started to understand this concept of neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity, what is that? That means the brain has this ability to change and reorganize itself based on certain stimuli. It can have this response and change its own structure. So what happens in chronic pain, and sometimes chronic pain starts out with an injury. Sometimes it seems like it comes out of nowhere. But over time, what acute pain turns into and ends up being chronic pain, oftentimes, more often than not, what modern neuroscience tells us is it has to do with the brain actually learning pain. And it creates these pathways in the brain. So let's talk a little bit about that. How do we know this? Where does this idea come from? And how does acute pain turn chronic? So we have this really amazing mechanism called the fight or flight response, this stress response in the body. And it has kept us around for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years. Without this stress response, the human species would not be here, right? It is so important. And what the brain does is it tries to figure out how to keep us alive. And it determines whether or not a stimuli is a threat. And if it is a threat, it's going to create these changes in our body to allow us to survive. So let's talk a little bit about what happens when we turn our ankle. If I'm running down the road and I turn my ankle, the brain is going to create pain because it knows it needs to keep me safe. The brain will actually perceive this sensation and this experience of turning my ankle as dangerous. It will create this physiological change in the body, pain, due to the stress response in order to keep me from further damaging the tissue in the ankle. So I'm going to experience pain. I realize, oh, hey, I need to slow down. I need to take a break. I need to rest because I'm in pain, right? This is why pain is so useful, because it's protecting us. However, just as the brain can turn on pain, the brain can also turn off pain. Because guess what? If I'm being chased by a lion and I'm running for my life and I trip and turn my ankle, do you think I'm going to experience pain in that moment? No, because the brain knows there's a bigger threat here, and pain is going to put her life in danger. So just as the brain can turn off pain, the brain can also, or just as the brain can turn on pain, it can also turn off pain. This is all due to neuroplasticity and the brain's really incredible, just how much power it has in our life to protect us. So the way acute pain and an ankle injury turns chronic is by constantly reinforcing this pathway of pain. And a lot of times that happens due to the stress in our lives. It can be due to our personality, which creates stress. And that pathway, that pain pathway, continues to persist. And over time, the brain actually learns pain. And then we get into this pain fear cycle. So we experience pain. We physically, emotionally, mentally experience fear as a result of this pain. When I'm in pain, I'm constantly thinking, oh my gosh, what do I have to do today? Am I going to be able to do that? Am I going to have to cancel on somebody? It creates more stress, which creates more pain, which creates more fear. And then before we know it, we're stuck in this pain fear cycle. Now what?